I stepped through my front door, the faint hum of a late spring evening still buzzing in my ears, expecting the usual quiet of an empty house. Instead, I heard the rustle of a suitcase zipper from upstairs. My wife, Lisa, was packing again. She'd been making these weekend trips for months, always with the same story. Visiting Mark, her brother from another mother. I bought it mostly, but that night something felt off. Her shadow darted across the hallway, and when she saw me, her smile flickered like a bad bulb about to blow. "You're early," she said, too quick, her hands fumbling with a sweater. I nodded, dropping my camera bag from the exhibit I just left. "Thought I'd surprise you." Her laugh was sharp, forced. She muttered something about Mark needing her help, then kissed my cheek, dry, perfunctory. I watched her haul the suitcase downstairs, my gut twisting. She'd never packed this fast for a family visit. I told myself I was overthinking it. Lisa and Mark went way back. High school pals, thick as thieves. She'd always said he was the sibling she never had. But as her car peeled out of the driveway, I couldn't shake the image of her shaky hands. I wandered to the kitchen, poured a glass of water, and stared at the sink. That's when I noticed her phone charger still plugged in. She never forgot that. Never. Therefore, my mind started spinning. If she was rushing to Mark, why leave something she'd need? I grabbed my keys, half laughing at myself. Nathan, the paranoid husband, chasing shadows. But I couldn't stop picturing her smile, the one that didn't reach her eyes. I had to know. So I climbed into my truck, the engine roaring to life, and followed her taillights into the dusk. What I'd find at the end of that road, though, wasn't just a lie. It was a wrecking ball aimed straight at my life. And it was already swinging. The highway stretched dark and endless as I trailed Lisa's sedan, keeping my headlights dim. I wasn't proud of it, spying on my wife like some low-budget detective. But her trips had doubled lately, always with Mark's name attached. I met him plenty, tall, easy grin, the kind of guy who'd slap your back too hard. They'd laugh about old times, finishing each other's sentences. It never bothered me before. I'd even liked the guy. But that night, my knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. Why the rush? Why the nerves? I told myself it was nothing, just stress from her job at the library. Therefore, I tried to calm down, flipping through mental snapshots of our life. Our wedding, the kids, the house. Solid, right? Then I remembered something. Last week, I'd pulled out an old photo album, one I'd shot years ago with my Canon. Lisa flipped through it, pointing out her high school crew. I'd asked about Mark, expecting a goofy teenage shot. She'd hesitated, then said, "Oh, he wasn't around much back then." It didn't hit me until now. There wasn't a single picture of him. Not one. My pulse quickened. If they were so close, why no evidence? I shook it off, focusing on her car ahead. She turned into a diner lot, one I recognized from late-night burger runs. I parked across the street, watching. Mark's truck was there, gleaming under the neon sign. She stepped out, and he met her at the door. They hugged, longer than I'd ever seen. My chest tightened. Friends don't hold on like that. I fumbled with my phone, zooming in with the camera app. The grainy image showed her hand lingering on his arm. My throat went dry. I wanted to storm over, demand answers. But then I stopped. What if I was wrong? What if this was just me, unraveling over nothing? The doubt gnawed deeper. Therefore, I drove home, her taillights fading in my mirror. But that hug replayed in my head all night, a loop I couldn't pause. And by morning, I knew I had to dig deeper or I'd never sleep again. A week later, I stood in the gym at our high school reunion, the air thick with sweat and cheap cologne. Lisa was there, dazzling in a blue dress, chatting up old classmates. I'd agreed to come, hoping it'd ease the tension coiling in my gut since the diner. I mingled, sipping a flat soda, trying to act normal. But every time she laughed across the room, I wondered who she was texting under the table. Then I ran into Greg, a linebacker-turned accountant I hadn't seen in decades. We swapped small talk, kids, jobs, the usual. He asked about Lisa, nodding toward her. She's still tight with Mark? I shrugged. Yeah, they're like family. Greg tilted his head, frowning. Huh, weird he's still around. His folks moved to Ohio senior year. Haven't seen him since. My soda nearly slipped from my hand. Ohio. I echoed. Greg nodded, oblivious to the bomb he'd just dropped. Yeah, after his dad's job transferred. Tough break. I forced a smile, my mind racing. Lisa always said Mark never left town, that they'd been inseparable since middle school. But if Greg was right, that timeline didn't add up. I glanced at her, now posing for a selfie with some cheerleader types. She looked so at ease, too at ease. Therefore, I excused myself from Greg, weaving through the crowd, my pulse thudding in my ears. I found a quiet corner and pulled out my phone, scrolling through Lisa's social media. No old pics of Mark there either, just recent ones, always captioned family. My photography brain kicked in. I'd spent years spotting patterns, framing shots. This wasn't adding up. If Mark left town, when did he come back? And why did Lisa rewrite their history? I wanted to confront her right there, drag her outside. But the gym doors swung open, and she waved me over, beaming. "Come take a group shot," she called. I grabbed my camera, forcing a grin, but my hand shook as I clicked the shutter. That night, I didn't sleep. Greg's words echoed, a crack in the foundation I couldn't unsee, and it was about to split wide open. By Friday, I couldn't take it anymore. Lisa announced another trip to help Mark with something, her voice casual, like she was grabbing groceries. I nodded, playing along, but my insides churned. That diner hug haunted me, her hand on his arm, the way they leaned in. I had to know. So when she left that evening, I waited 5 minutes, then grabbed my keys. My truck rumbled to life, and I followed her, keeping 2 cars between us. It felt ridiculous, tailing my own wife. But Greg's story had lit a fuse, and every excuse she'd fed me was fuel. She took familiar road, past the old mill, straight to that same diner. I parked across the lot, headlights off, and watched her climb out. Mark was waiting, leaning against his truck. They didn't just hug this time. She rested her forehead against his chest, his hands on her shoulders. My stomach lurched. I'd seen Lisa cry before, but never like that. Never with him. I grabbed my camera, habit, maybe, and snapped a few shots through the windshield. The lens caught her wiping her eyes, him whispering something. Friends don't do that. My breath fogged the glass as I zoomed in, their outlines blurry but unmistakable. Therefore, I sat there, frozen, until they walked inside, arms brushing. I could have stormed in, made a scene. But my mind jumped tracks. What if this wasn't just an affair? We had kids, Emily, 17, and Jacob, 14. What if Mark was more than a fling? The thought hit like a freight train. My family might not be mine. I drove home, hands trembling, the camera heavy in my lap. Lisa's car wasn't back when I pulled in, but I didn't care. I poured a whiskey, staring at those photos on my laptop. Her tears, his grip, they mocked me. I trusted her for 20 years, built a life on that trust. But now, every memory felt like a lie. Therefore, I made a choice. I confront her when she got back, not with screams, but with proof. And if she couldn't explain this, I'd tear the truth out myself, no matter what it cost. Lisa rolled in at midnight, her hair messy, eyes red. I was on the couch, the laptop glowing with those diner photos. She froze when she saw me, suitcase thudding to the floor. "You're up late," she said, voice tight. I didn't answer, just turned a screen toward her. Her face drained of color as she stared at herself, mid-hug with Mark. "What is this?" she stammered. "What looks like I shot back, calm but cold." She stepped closer, hands up like I'd pulled a weapon. "Nathan, it's not what you think. Mark's going through something. I was just crying on him." I cut in, pointing at the timestamp. 2 hours ago. She sank onto the armrest, rubbing her temples. "He's family to me. You know that." I laughed, bitter. Family doesn't sneak off every weekend. Family doesn't lie about moving to Ohio. Her eyes widened. Greg's clue had landed. She scrambled. "I never said that. You're twisting things." But I wasn't. I pulled out my phone, locked since she'd last asked to borrow it. "Unlock it," I said. "Show me the texts." She hesitated, then shook her head. "That's ridiculous. I don't owe you my privacy." Therefore, the room went silent, her refusal louder than any confession. I stood, towering over her. 20 years, Lisa, and you can't even look me in the eye." She tried tears next, reaching for my hand. I pulled back. My mind wasn't on her anymore. It was on Emily and Jacob. If she'd been this close to Mark, how far back did it go? I saw Emily's smile, Jacob's lanky frame. Would he even mind? The question clawed at me, sharper than her betrayal. How long? I asked, voice low. She blinked. What? You and him. How long? She stood defiant now. There's no me and him. You're paranoid. But her locked phone, her red eyes, they screamed otherwise. I grabbed my keys, heading for the garage. Where are you going? She called. Out, I said, slamming the door. I didn't know yet, but I was already planning tests, proof, anything to claw back what was real. Because if she'd taken my kids from me, I'd burn it all down. The next morning, I sat at the kitchen table, coffee cold, staring at Emily as she scrolled her phone across from me. She was 17, all sharp cheekbones and quiet rebellion. Lisa's eyes, I'd always thought. But now, every glance at her felt like a question mark. She grinned at something, typing fast. Who's that? I asked, casual as I could manage. Tyler, she said, not looking up. Mark's son. My jaw tightened. They've been dating a few months. Nothing serious, she'd said. I'd met him once. Lanky, polite, with Mark's easy charm. I'd liked him. But after last night's fight with Lisa, that name, Tyler, hit different. What if he wasn't just her boyfriend? I sipped my coffee, forcing a smile. You two seem close. She nodded, still texting. He's great. We're hanging out later. My chest constricted. I pictured them together, laughing, holding hands. Then my mind twisted it. What if they shared more than that? What if Mark's shadow stretched further than I'd feared? I'd always trusted my gut. It had kept me steady, grading papers, framing shots. But now it was screaming. Therefore, I stood, muttering about errands, and grabbed my laptop from the counter. Emily didn't notice, lost at her screen. I locked myself in the garage, pulling up Tyler's social media. Same grin as Mark. Same nose, maybe. I shook my head. Stop it, Nathan. But I couldn't. Lisa's locked phone, her tears with Mark, they looped in my head. Emily and Tyler weren't just a cute high school thing anymore. They were a ticking bomb. I opened a tab, searching paternity test kits. Discreet, fast, accurate. My finger hovered over order. Was I really doing this? Testing my own kids? But then Emily's laugh echoed from the kitchen, bright and oblivious. Therefore, I clicked it. 2 kits, one for her, one for Jacob. I'd spent 17 years building her world. If it was a lie, I'd tear it apart myself before it hurt her worse. And if Tyler was her brother, I'd stop them, whatever it took. The order confirmation pinged. Now I just had to wait. The kits arrived 3 days later, tucked in a plain brown box. I told Lisa I was picking up photo supplies. Half true, since I'd grabbed some prints too. She barely looked up from her book, still icy since our fight. I stashed the box in my truck, heart pounding. I wasn't ready to swab my kids like some crime scene tech, but I had to know. Emily was at school, Jacob at soccer. Perfect timing. But as I held the first kit, my hand shook. This wasn't just about Lisa and Mark anymore. It was about me, my name, my blood. What if they weren't mine? Could I still be their dad? I paced the garage, replaying every milestone. Emily's first steps, Jacob's gap-toothed grin. Lisa swore they were mine, but her lies about Mark tainted everything. I'd seen her dodge my questions, deflect with tears. Therefore, I grabbed Emily's hairbrush from the bathroom, strands still tangled in it, and swabbed it quick, sealing the sample. Jacob's was trickier. I snagged a used water bottle from his backpack. Gross, but it'd work. I mailed them off, the clerk's bored stare burning into me. Driving home, I felt like a thief stealing their truth. But I wasn't the one hiding things, Lisa was. That night, I couldn't sleep. Lisa was downstairs, TV blaring some sitcom. I sat in the dark, Googling how accurate are paternity tests. 99%. Good enough. But then I heard Emily's car pull in, late, past curfew. I peeked out the window. Tyler dropped her off, leaning close as they said goodbye. My stomach flipped. They didn't kiss, but the way he lingered, too familiar. Therefore, I grabbed my keys, ready to follow him, demand answers. Then I stopped. What would I say? Hey, kid, you might be my daughter's brother? I sank onto the bed, head in my hands. The results would take a week. Until then, I'd watch them, Emily, Tyler, Lisa, like a hawk. Every laugh, every touch was evidence now. And if those tests came back wrong, I'd have to decide, tell her or bury it. Either way, someone was losing everything. Waiting for the results was torture, so I started digging. Lisa was at work, the kids at school. I had the house to myself. Time to hunt. I'd always respected her space. 20 years married. You build trust. But that was gone now, shattered by diner hugs and locked phones. I started in our bedroom, rifling through her dresser. Nothing but socks and old receipts. Then I hit her nightstand. Under a stack of paperbacks, I found a tin box, rusted locked. My pulse spiked. Lisa didn't keep secrets, not like this. But here was proof she did. I grabbed a paperclip, bending it to pick the lock, something I'd learned framing bent photo mounts. It popped open, and inside were letters, yellowed, creased, tied with string. Mark's handwriting stared back at me, blocky and bold. I unfolded the top one, dated 15 years ago. Lisa, you my anchor. I can't wait to see you again. My throat closed. Another. He doesn't get you like I do. My hand shook as I read on. Dozens of them, spanning years. They weren't just friends. They were something else, something close. Therefore, I sat on the bed, the tins spilling across the comforter, my world tilting. She'd kept these hidden while I built our life, our kids, our home. I heard the front door creak. Lisa, home early. I shoved the letters back, slamming the tin shut, but my sleeve caught one, dragging it under the bed. She called out, Nathan. I stood, shoving the box into the drawer, heart hammering. Yeah, just resting, I lied, stepping into the hall. She looked tired, suspicious. You okay? She asked. I nodded, forcing a smile. But as she brushed past, I saw her glance at the nightstand. Did she know? Therefore, I waited till she showered, then retrieved that stray letter. It was the oldest from before Emily was born. If it's mine, we'll figure it out. Mine. That word burned through me. The tests weren't back yet, but this was a grenade. Proof Mark wasn't just in her past. He might have been in my future, too. And I was running out of time to stop him. The email came Tuesday, mid-morning. I was grading essays in my classroom, kids chattering outside during lunch. Subject: your results are ready. My hands went cold. I'd been dreading this, but I couldn't wait. I clicked the link. The page loaded slow, each percentage ticking up like a countdown. Then there it was. Emily, 0% match. Jacob, 0% match. Not my daughter. Not my son. The room spun. 20 years of diaper changes, school plays, bedtime stories gone. Lisa hadn't just betrayed me. She'd rewritten my life. I stared at the screen, numbers glaring back, undeniable. But then I heard footsteps. Lisa, picking me up for lunch like we'd planned. She knocked, peeking in. Ready. Her voice was light, normal. I closed the laptop, throat tight. Yeah, I managed grabbing my bag. She chattered about her day as we walked to the car, oblivious. I nodded, autopilot on, but my mind screamed. She knew. She had to. Therefore, we drove home in silence, my silence, anyway. She hummed to the radio, tapping the wheel. I watched her, this stranger I'd married. The letters, the tests, they lined up too perfectly. Mark wasn't just her brother, he was their father. And she let me raise them, smiling all the while. We pulled into the driveway. I couldn't hold it in. I know, I said, voice low. She froze, keys dangling. Know what? I pulled out my phone, opened the results, and shoved it at her. They're not mine. Her face crumpled, shock, then panic. Nathan, that's impossible. There's a mistake. No mistake. I snapped, stepping out. She followed, grabbing my arm. Listen, I swear they're yours. Mark and I, it was nothing. I yanked away, holding up the phone. This says different. She stared, mouth open, then sank against the car. It was one time, she whispered. Before Jacob. One time. 15 years of letters laughed in my face. Therefore, I walked inside, leaving her there. She'd lied too long, and now I had proof, not just of her betrayal, but of how far she'd go to hide it. And I wasn't done digging yet. I stood in the living room, the test results still glowing on my phone. Lisa trailed in behind me, her shoes scuffing the hardwood. Nathan, let me explain, she pleaded, voice cracking. I turned, arms crossed. Explain how you let me raise his kids? How you cried on him at the diner? Her eyes widened, caught. You followed me? I nodded. and I read the letters. If it's mine, we'll figure it out. Sound familiar? She flinched, hands twisting together. That was years ago. I didn't know. I thought they were yours. You thought. I stepped closer, towering over her. Or you hoped I'd never find out? She sank onto the couch, tears streaming. It wasn't like that. Mark and I, we were confused, young. It happened once before Jacob. I never meant stop. I cut in. 15 years of letters isn't once. You kept him close, Lisa. Every weekend, every family story. She shook her head, desperate. I love you. I stayed with you. You stayed, I said, voice flat, and let me live a lie. I tossed the phone onto the coffee table, results glaring up. She stared at it, then me. What now? She whispered. I didn't answer, just watched her squirm. Therefore, her mask slipped. You can't take them from me, she said, sharper now. They're still mine. That hit me, mine. She didn't care what I'd lost. She cared what she'd lose. They're not mine, I said, slow. And you made sure of that. She stood, defiant. You raised them. That's what matters. No, I snapped. Truth matters. And you stole it. I grabbed my keys, heading for the door. Where are you going? She called, panicked. To think, I said, slamming it behind me. I drove aimlessly, her words looping, confused, young once. Lies. The letters proved it was more, and the test sealed it. Therefore, I pulled into a gas station, staring at my reflection in the windshield. I wasn't just a cheated husband. I was a ghost in my own life. And Emily, Jacob, they deserved better than this mess. I had to protect them, even if it meant breaking everything apart. Starting with her. I pulled into the driveway after midnight, the house dark except for Emily's bedroom light. Lisa's confession still burned. Mark's kids, not mine. I couldn't face her again, not yet. But Emily was different. She was still my daughter, blood or not. I'd raised her, taught her to ride a bike, cheered at her games. Now she was dating Tyler, Mark's son, and every second they spent together felt like a knife. I climbed the stairs, rehearsing what to say. She'd hate me, but I had to stop them. I knocked. Em, we need to talk. She opened the door, phone in hand, eyes wary. What's wrong? I sat on her bed, avoiding the posters of bands I didn't recognize. You and Tyler, it's over. You can't see him anymore. Her face hardened. What? What? I swallowed, picking my words. He's not good for you. Trust me. She laughed sharp. That's it? You don't get to decide that. I gripped my knees, the truth clawing up. He might be closer to you than you think. Her brow furrowed. What's that supposed to mean? Therefore, I broke. He could be your half-brother, Em. Your mom and Mark. She cut me off, standing. Are you serious? That's insane. Her voice cracked, tears welling. You're lying. Mom wouldn't. She did. I said quiet. I have proof. She stared, then grabbed her phone, texting fast, Tyler probably. Get out, she whispered. I stood, helpless. I'm trying to protect you. Protect me, she shouted. You're ruining everything. I left, her door slamming behind me. Downstairs, I heard her sobbing through the walls. Therefore, I sank onto the couch, head in my hands. She didn't believe me. Why would she? Lisa had poisoned this too. But I couldn't let her stay blind. If she kept seeing Tyler, she'd stumble into the truth the hard way. I had to act, not just talk. The house felt like a cage now, closing in. And I knew, staying here wasn't an option anymore. I had to get her out, away from them all. The next day, I called in sick, couldn't face the classroom with my life imploding. Lisa was at work, Emily at school, Jacob with friends. I had hours to think. Emily's tears, her defiance, they haunted me. She wouldn't listen, not while Lisa spun her version. And Mark, he was out there probably laughing, raising my son like a trophy. I couldn't stay in this house, this town, breathing the same air as them. But I couldn't leave Emily behind either. She deserved a fresh start, even if she hated me for it. Therefore, I opened my laptop, searching for rentals, far away, somewhere new. Oregon, maybe. Green, quiet, a place to heal. I'd save cash from photography gigs, portraits, weddings, enough to move if I sold the house. Lisa didn't know about that account. I kept it separate for emergencies. This qualified, but selling meant legal mess. She'd fight me. I grabbed my phone, texting a realtor friend, Tom. Need to list the house. Fast. Quietly. He replied, quick. Divorce stuff? I didn't correct him. Something like that. Therefore, I started packing my clothes, Emily's essentials, photo gear. I tell her it was temporary, a trip. She'd come kicking and screaming, but she'd come. Then I heard the garage door rumble. Lisa, home early again. I shoved the bags into the closet, heart racing. She walked in, eyes puffy. Emily called me. Said you're losing it. I shrugged, playing dumb. She's upset. Lisa stepped closer. You can't tell her things like that, Nathan. She's a kid. She's not a kid, I said, sharp. And she's not safe here. Lisa frowned. What's that mean? I didn't answer, just watched her, wondering how deep her lies went. Therefore, I grabbed my keys, brushing past. I'm running errands. She called after me, but I was gone, driving to Tom's office. Papers signed, house listed, step 1. Emily wouldn't understand yet, but I'd drag her out of this mess before it swallowed her. Lisa and Mark could rot here. I'd build something new, even if it cost me everything else. The clock was ticking now. Tom texted that night. House listed, cash buyer interested. Fast, like I'd wanted. I sat in my truck outside a diner. Not that diner. Watching rain streak the windshield. Emily was still furious, barely speaking. Lisa kept calling, leaving voicemails I deleted unheard. I told Emily we were visiting family in Oregon soon. She'd rolled her eyes but hadn't fought it yet. I just needed her away from Tyler from this. But then my phone buzzed. Lisa again. I almost ignored it. Therefore, I answered, voice flat. What? She was crying. Come home, Nathan. Mark's gone. I ended it. We can fix this. I laughed hollow. Fix it? You don't fix 20 years of lies. She begged. I'll do anything. For the kids. The kids. Hers and Mark's. I gripped the wheel, tempted to believe her. She sounded broken real. But I'd heard that tone before. Diner tears. Fake promises. Therefore, I hung up, staring at the rain. Then I heard it. A faint ring from my bag. My spare phone, one I'd grabbed for the move. I'd left it on the counter earlier. Curious, I answered. Hello. Silence. Then Lisa's voice, muffled. Not to me. Mark, he's leaving. We need to fix this now. My blood ran cold. She hadn't called me. She dialed the spare by mistake, still talking to him. He's taking Emily, she said. We can't let him. Mark's voice crackled back. I'll handle it. Jacob's fine here. Jacob, my boy with him. I dropped the phone, hands shaking. She hadn't ended anything. She was plotting with Mark, even now. Therefore, I sped home, rain blurring the road. The house was dark when I burst in. Lisa jumped, phone in hand, caught again. Who were you talking to? I demanded. She stammered, no one. I grabbed her phone, redialing. Mark picked up. Lisa. I hung up, staring at her. You're done, I said, voice low. She sank to the floor, sobbing. I didn't care. They were scheming to keep my kids, her kids, in their web. No more. I was taking Emily and leaving tonight. They'd lost their chance. I didn't sleep, just packed. Emily's clothes, my gear, essentials. She was upstairs, headphones on, oblivious. Lisa stayed downstairs, curled on the couch, silent after her breakdown. I didn't confront her again. Words were useless now. Tom called at dawn. Buyer wired the money. House sold. I kept it off Lisa's radar. Her name wasn't on the deed, a fluke from when we'd bought it. My photography cash padded the rest. Therefore, I loaded the truck quiet and methodical. Emily stumbled down, bleary-eyed. What's happening? I forced a smile. Road trip. Oregon. Now. She glared. I'm not going. You are, I said, firm. Get in. She fought, yelled, cried, but I hauled her bag in anyway. Lisa watched, hollow-eyed, not stopping me. I drove off, Emily sulking beside me, town fading in the rear view. My phone buzzed, Lisa, texting, please don't do this. I replied once, you broke us. Then I blocked her. Therefore, I stopped at a gas station, pulling out a notebook. I'd written a letter, short, cold. You and Mark can have each other. I'm done. I mailed it from there, no return address. She'd find out the house was gone when the new owners showed up. No warning, no mercy. Oregon was 20 hours away. Emily stared out the window, silent now. I didn't tell her about Jacob, couldn't yet. Mark had him, and Lisa let it happen. I'd fight for him later, legally, once we were settled. But Emily, She was mine to save. Therefore, I kept driving, rain turning to sun as we crossed state lines. She finally spoke, voice small. Why'd you do this? I gripped the wheel. To protect you. You'll see. She didn't reply, but her silence felt less hostile. I'd sold everything. House, trust, 20 years for this chance. Lisa and Mark thought they'd won, keeping Jacob, spinning their story. But I'd taken what mattered most. Time with Emily, a clean break. They'd wake up to an empty shell, no leverage left. It wasn't loud, wasn't violent, just final. And as the miles stretched on, I felt lighter, like I'd shed their lies with every turn. We hit Oregon a month later, settled in a small rental. Pine trees, quiet streets. Emily started school, grudgingly at first, but she'd made a friend, a girl with purple hair. I found work, teaching, some photo gigs on weekends. The house money kept us afloat, a cushion I didn't flaunt. Lisa called once from a new number, begging me to come back. I hung up, blocked it. She'd lost, her and Mark, playing house with Jacob. I'd hired a lawyer, digging into custody, but it was slow. For now, I focused on Emily. She didn't ask about Tyler much. Time was dulling that ache. But I still saw her pause sometimes, staring at nothing. I'd sit on the porch nights, camera in hand, framing shots of the woods. It steadied me, reminded me who I was before Lisa's mess. I'd raised those kids, blood didn't change that. But then a letter came, forwarded from Tom. Lisa's handwriting. Nathan, we're together now. Jacob's happy. You left us. My gut twisted. Together. Mark had slithered in, taken my son, and she'd let him. Therefore, I dug online, Mark's social media, public now. Photos of Jacob, smiling, caption my boy. My hand shook. He'd known, planned it, maybe Lisa's pawn or her puppet master. I didn't tell Emily, couldn't. She was healing, laughing again. But I wondered, should I? She'd hate me more, or them. Therefore, I kept it quiet, tucking the letter away. Revenge wasn't loud anymore. It was this, her thriving, us free. Lisa and Mark could spin their tale, but I'd taken the one thing they couldn't touch, Emily's future. I'd fight for Jacob later, when the time was right. For now, I watched her from the porch, snapping a candid as she kicked a soccer ball. She waved, half smiling. Creep, she teased. I grinned back. It wasn't perfect, but it was ours. And as the sun dipped, I knew they hadn't won. Not really. I'd lost a family, but I'd built something stronger, truth. Thank you for tuning into this story. We appreciate every single one of you. We'd love to know what part of the world you're watching from right now. Let us know in the comments.